Hey everybody, I'm Jacob Abel, and you're listening to the DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast.
Welcome back, DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast, and we're joined by a guest we had on probably just under 2 months ago now, but the situation has changed very much for this individual who is Jacob Abel, now the driver of number 51 Dale Coyne Racing. And yeah, Jacob, it's been 2 weeks now since you got announced, about 2-3 weeks, so now we speak about Jacob Abel, IndyCar driver. How does it feel?
Yeah, it's awesome, man. I think it's finally starting to set in a little bit as we're kind of getting to work. And we were at the track a couple of days ago, and I've been in the shop a good bit, so all of that it's all kind of started to become real. It's been pretty flat out ever since that announcement. As we spoke before, the off season up to that point had been a little slow. It was just a lot of preparing for something that we didn't really know what we were preparing for. But now that everything's set in stone, we have a little bit of time still till St. Pete, but it's been pretty flat out ever since. And
similarly to last time, you've just come back off her test. This time it was at Thermal, obviously your first one since being announced for the team. So how did the day go?
Yeah, it went well. I think we kind of have to look at everything in a little bit of a different light than a lot of the teams do. That team wasn't necessarily where they wanted to be last year, and I'm a rookie. I don't have a lot of experience, so everything's not going to be perfect right out of the gates, and it's going to take a little bit to get everything to where we want to be. But I'm just happy to be an IndyCar driver and happy to embark on that journey. It's a really exciting process and something that I'm looking forward to building on day by day together with this group of people. And yeah, hopefully improving a lot throughout the year, and hopefully getting some good results along the way.
Was there any real kind of big focus of the test? Because obviously lap time is one thing, but you're going to have to get used to pit stops, fuel saving, all of that sort of stuff. So what is the focus at this stage?
Absolutely. That was, a big thing. That's going to be the biggest change for me, is all of the pit stops, the strategy, managing a car over a long run, in a full tire life, opposed to, all the races I've done up to this point are relatively a sprint race. So yeah, it's a lot of that, a lot of longer running, a lot of, changes focused on long run pace. And again, hitting the box. They had all the cones set out for me of, worst case scenario where there's a car in front of me pitted and a car behind us pitted as well. So we just kind of have to manage the pit lane and all of that. And it's obviously something that's very, very tight and a difficult thing to manage, but we got a ton of practice with that. And those smaller things were honestly just as much of a target for us to go through as the, just outright pace was. Obviously it's a track we race at, and something that we wanted to learn and try some setup things. But at the end of the day, it was my first test really as an IndyCar driver, preparing for a season, opposed to, just doing a one-off test like I have been doing before. So yeah, it was a cool experience. And, it's nice to leave the test and really continue that preparation, opposed to, the tests I've done in the past. It's been, we leave the track and it's like, see you never, basically. But this time it's really digesting everything that we learned, every lap, all the data, all the video, and trying to maximize that over the next few days, and really just taking everything we can and getting ready for the next test at Sebring and ultimately St. Pete and the rest of the season.
Was this your first time at Thermal?
It was, yeah. Well, I actually was there, I think it was 4 years ago now, for just a GT3 car shakedown, but it was at a different layout and all of that. So that was another thing that was, not super ideal, I guess. Was my first test with the team, kind of learning that car and learning the track at the same time. But at the end of the day, I would have had to do that at the race weekend otherwise. So it was good to get there and get on that track before the race weekend, because our weekends are very, very compressed, and there's not a lot of track time once we get there.
Is there anywhere else you haven't driven? I guess Indy Oval, but anywhere else?
Yeah, honestly, that was one of the most important things with this thermal test, is it was pretty much the only track that I haven't driven on in some capacity. Obviously, the Indy Oval is pretty protected, and now that we don't do the Freedom 100, I haven't been there yet in a proper race car, but Everywhere else I've pretty much been, even Long Beach, which is the only track that I haven't, technically raced at, but I went there in a stadium super truck. So I guess that's worth something.
Slightly different.
Right. And that's another one, I've done a billion laps on the sim on iRacing, just like everyone I'm sure has. It's one of those iconic tracks that doesn't really change too much over the years. So yeah, that was definitely a big thing, because Thermal is one of the only tracks that I haven't been to, which is awesome.
And what did you make of the track at Thermal? I know, like, we've spoken to drivers in the past and they've said there's kind of two quite distinct sections. So is it kind of comparable to anything else? Or was it all quite a new sort of track for you?
It was very new to me, especially just the way that the tire interacts with the surface as well. It's relatively low grip. And with that being said, it is a bit peaky on the tire. So you don't get as much of a qualifying run per se, as much as just a qualifying one lap, which was at the end of the day really good practice for me, because from what I understand, that's kind of how the reds are too at most tracks. So yeah, that was a little bit to wrap my head around. But yeah, the track itself, the layout is cool. It's got a very big mix of, low speed and high speed corners. And it makes, getting a car figured out and tuned to the right setup and stuff a little bit more difficult, just because of that. But yeah, it was a cool track. I think it has a lot of intricacies. It's got a ton of corners. So it was a little bit to learn, especially just coming in there completely fresh, but I feel a lot better about it now than I did at the start of the day.
And just a final point on the test, are there any kind of big points that you've taken away, whether in terms of things that you felt actually went better than expected, or points of improvement for when you get to Sebring for the next test?
Yeah, I think it's just going to be hopefully a little bit of a progressive curve of improvement throughout the whole season. I think just in new personnel coming in and all of that, and me learning, the ins and outs of the team and the car itself, I think just doing that more and more is going to get easier. It was a little bit of a tough test, because honestly, this was the first proper road course that I've driven an IndyCar at. Sebring, we obviously all do a ton of testing at and a ton of miles at, but at the end of the day, it's more of a street course simulation anyways than an actual, proper road course where you can test the actual downforce of the car and experience that in its full capacity. So it really was kind of my first full go at it, in a high speed corner and all of that. So learning that was a little bit of a learning curve. Ended up, wrapping my head around it. And I think it's at the end of the day, just another race car. And yeah, I think, but with it being a new track to me as well, made it a little bit difficult to learn all of that at once. But I think it's going to be, a little bit smoother going forward at all the tracks that I've, have a ton of experience and success at.
Moving on to how the deal came around, which is obviously, I guess, why we're all here. I mean, how early did talk sort of start with Dale into getting a seat for 2025? And when did you sort of start to build momentum and think, okay, this is a real possibility?
Yeah, we spoke about it for the past probably 3 or 4 months. And it was just always a kind of a let's keep in touch ending to all of our phone calls and all of our discussions. And I don't think we ever had really a negative discussion with Dale and their whole program. It's always been that I've wanted to be there, and seemingly they've wanted me to be there as well. It's just kind of figuring out all the logistics and all of that stuff on the financial and corporate side of things. But yeah, I think it all kind of came together relatively quickly in that last week or so. It was nice to have the media day, because we were able to use that as a bit of a deadline to try and get an announcement out, get, a final contract signed, so that, I could go there and begin, marketing myself for more future sponsors and partners throughout the year, which I think will be helpful. So yeah, it was very slowly progressing throughout the 2 or 3 months before the announcement, and all just came together very, very quickly in that last, week and a half or so.
And just before we continue on the deal, you mentioned the media days. I know a lot of listeners probably won't know, the drivers all speak about, wow, it's a long day. And we've just spoken to you about this kind of off camera as well. Can you just kind of tell the listeners, viewers, exactly kind of what you have to get up to on those content days?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I was saying to you guys, it's a bit ridiculous to complain about because our jobs are to go out and drive as fast as we can in a circle. We don't have to show up to an office every day. So we are very fortunate for that. But the media day is difficult. It's very taxing mentally and emotionally and physically. You have to be there at 7 a.m. in the morning and you're there till 5 p.m. And I recognize that most people in the corporate workforce have to work hours like that every single day, but this was one thing that we had to be super on the whole entire time, reading off of teleprompters, showing maximum energy for, 8-9 hours straight. So it was fun. I think I was probably the driver there having the most fun because it had just been announced basically the day before that I was an IndyCar driver. So I was just happy to be there. It was kind of like, first day at school kind of thing and the new kid, but yeah, it was fun. I think what the series and what Fox is doing is going to be really, really cool. Every driver has talked about that, and we can't get into overly too much detail, but I think it was just super cool how everything was set up, and it just showed how much they're really putting into it and getting behind, making us drivers really the star and promoting the series the way it should be and needs to be promoted.
Yeah, that's cool. And just going back to the deal, were you kind of having to consider options before you'd finish the Indy next season, or were you trying to keep that kind of late season push in Indy next separate to IndyCar discussions?
Yeah, I'd say probably around maybe the Portland race or a little bit before that is kind of when we started to plan for the future a little bit. Trying to get ahead of it as much as possible. We saw contracts being negotiated and re-signed. It seems to happen in May or June every year for the following year. So you always feel like you're a little bit behind in it, no matter how early you start. And the seats just start getting snatched up left and right. There's not that many of them. So just trying to have as many meetings as possible with all the options, with all the teams, regardless of if they're even, realistic or not, is just kind of getting in the door and using that time to make introductions and spend as much time as possible with people. If it's not for this coming season, maybe seasons in the future. So yeah, we did kind of start that as early as we could, and working, parallel with our end of the season championship run and Indy next. And I think it was honestly good to do that because it's good to talk to those teams on a race weekend when I'm going to be on track in 2 hours, and they can say, oh, we just had a meeting with this kid and now he's gone and won a race. Oh, that's pretty cool. I think they have an eye on me a little bit more, and it's all a little bit more fresh than, talking in October when it's been 3 months since I've won a race. So it's nice to have it, fresh in their minds.
And it was kind of quite a long period over which you were speaking to Dale. How do you kind of go about balancing not being too much of a pest and constantly like trying to call him and negotiate, but also actually making sure that you are in contact enough that it stays in his mind? And yeah, you've just maintaining that line of communication, I guess.
Yeah, I think we spoke about this a little bit, a few months ago, but it's something that I don't really know, because all my contract negotiations and team negotiations have been basically with my father and with our family team in the past. So there hasn't been a lot of negotiating and a lot of push pull at all. So that was something that I wasn't super reassured about, just because I thought I was doing as much as I can and talking to as many teams as I could and talking to Dale as much as possible. But at the end of the day, I didn't really know what it was supposed to feel like and didn't really know what the reactions I was supposed to be getting were. I felt relatively confident, and, Dale's words in particular were very reassuring. But at the end of the day, it's racing and we all know how it goes, and nothing's done until it's done. So yeah, that kind of made it a little bit uncomfortable, but I obviously feel good now that everything is signed and sealed and finished.
Did you do a lot of it yourself then, kind of the work to try and get the deal together? Because I know some drivers like to delegate, but some drivers do like to kind of be the one driving it forward.
Yeah, I did a lot of the conversations myself. I don't have a manager, but my dad is very business savvy and can kind of be in all those calls. And then, our team manager from the Indy Next side of thing knows every single person in the paddock. He's been in the IndyCar paddock for, a long time, but so he can kind of act as the guy on the team side of things a little bit more with the industry knowledge, where my dad can kind of pick up on the business side and I can kind of merge everything together. So I feel like we do have a pretty good little team put together. I do have people helping me on the corporate side of things and the sponsorship finding things and stuff like that now, just because I do need to focus on being a race car driver. But yeah, I recognize that it's really important to get the car on track before you can focus on getting the car faster. So yeah.
Nice. You tested with Dale end of 23, was it, at Sebring? So it was quite a long time ago. But sort of, did that create any long-term links with Dale at all? Did that sort of help, I guess, longer term for yourself, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I've always said this, is Dale is one of the team owners that really pays attention to the younger series, the little cars and the Indy Next series in particular, which is really comforting as a driver. It's, some of the team owners aren't looking at that every single, week in and week out, because a lot of teams honestly aren't necessarily looking to pull drivers from that series, just because some teams want more proven drivers and drivers that have won races and proven themselves in IndyCar. So it is nice that Dale does pay attention and recognize those teams, and it really makes me feel appreciated. So yeah, with that being said, I think we have had a relationship, especially ever since that test. Just preparing for a test, you always spend a lot of time together, and he was at the test and felt very good about it. I think with that test in particular, we always knew that we were racing Indy Next in 2024, but it was a really cool opportunity anyways. And it's something that ever since leaving that test, it was always, let's keep in touch. Let's, keep moving forward for the future.
And looking at the team, I obviously know that they're not sort of the end of the field that they want to be, but we've seen people like Alex Palou, David Malukas, Romain Grosjean sort of use the team in their rookie seasons and then sort of take that stepping stone. So I guess from your perspective, how is it as a team for a rookie driver where there clearly has been progression in recent years and the team that are sort of focused on developing their rookies?
Yeah, it's great. I think Dale really prides himself in that. I think he prides himself on developing young drivers and honestly developing champions. You see Alex Palou, Romain Grosjean, David Malukas, those are just his recent graduates of his program, per se. But even on the engineering side and the team side as well, if you look back, it's a little bit of an unknown just as a casual fan, and even it took me a while to figure it out, but there's been tons of super successful engineers that are now on very big championship winning teams that came through Dale's program in the past 10, 15 years. So he does have an eye for talent, and particularly young talent, I think. So it is a cool experience to be in that team. And you've seen once they have, drivers that are good and committed to the organization, like Grosjean, like Malukas, like Palou, that, they can finish on the podium and they can ultimately win races. So that's kind of my goal. Like I said, I don't expect that to happen overnight, but it's something that is really exciting, that is a potential out of this program if all the pieces fall into place.
And we've touched on the test, but what other work have you already put in with the team in terms of, back at the shop and just generally what's that bedding in process, that adaptation been like for you so far?
Yeah, I've just been trying to spend as much time with them as I can. Obviously our whole relationship is still very new, just really officially starting only a couple of weeks ago. They're up in Chicago. I'm based in Indy, so it's not too far away, but yeah, I'm just trying to get in there and meet the guys and really just kind of become family like I have with the team at Abel Motorsports for the past 5 years. So I think that's very helpful when we all know each other and can get that level of communication up there. So just been trying to do that, and even spending casual time together, going to lunches, going to dinners, and just trying to break that barrier of driver and engineer, mechanic, and just kind of merge us all into one team.
Alongside you is the only unconfirmed seat for 2025's So I guess from your perspective, what do you sort of want out of a teammate in your rookie season?
Yeah, I think someone with experience would be very helpful. Just because I am a rookie and the team is changing all throughout the year. It'd be nice to have somebody who knows what to expect out of a car and all of that. I've heard all the rumors just like everyone else has, and no, I don't know who's going to be in the seat quite yet, but yeah, I think that's all I can ask for is someone who has some experience and can work together well with me, and we can hopefully, bring the team back to the front together.
And there have been reports that Rinus VK was at the test at Thermal with the team. Did you get to kind of interact with him at all, and did he give you any particular help and support there?
Yeah, he was helpful. I think he was just trying to come and help me out a little bit with first test with the team, really. So yeah, very helpful. He's someone with a lot of experience. He's a race winning driver, and yeah, he's super helpful resource to have.
Can you kind of just talk a bit about your mentality, your thought process that you went through this off season? Because I know you said on Content Day, and you mentioned to us as well, that now you're in a position where you feel like you can feel like yourself again now. So were the points where there were doubts, and I guess just what were the stress levels like as well, trying to get this something sorted?
Yeah, it was very stressful for sure. Just kind of not knowing what was coming next. I would go to the gym every day like I always do and try and be as prepared and ready for whatever it may be. But yeah, you don't really truly know what you're actually preparing for. So yeah, it was nice to finally get something done because, now for the foreseeable future, there will be a Nexus time on track. Right now it's Sebring. So it's all eyes looking forward to that and trying to make that test as productive as possible. And, after that, it'll be St. Pete, and then, so on and so forth throughout the whole entire season. So that's definitely the biggest thing I mean when I say, I'm kind of back to being myself and having something to look forward to and having that light, a little bit at the end of the tunnel.
We all know how difficult the IndyCar driving market is nowadays. There's far more interest than there are seats. So were you exploring any other options with other teams, or did you sort of narrow it down as only Dale was the only potential opening for you?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of always wanted to be with Dale, even when there were other seats available. That's not saying we didn't speak with any other teams, but I've kind of seen their program, and I know Dale personally, and I know he wasn't a fan of where they were last year just as much as anyone else. So he wants to succeed, and I think that team is really very much on the rise and on the way up, and I think that's something that I really wanted to be a part of.
And I guess heading into the seasons, I know it's a very broad question, but sort of how ready do you feel? Sort of, are you prepared for this year to be a bit of a learning process in your first season?
Yeah, I think, regardless of what team I was at or where I'm going to be, it's going to be a learning process anyways. It's my first season in IndyCar. So it's a ton of change. Luckily the tracks are the same and the tires the same. The car is relatively similar. And I feel as prepared as I'm going to be, but naturally there's always going to be those learning curves and surprises and different things that are going to come at me. And I think that's something in my mentality that I just am going to have to keep in mind, because it's not like last year where we're going out expecting to fight for the podium and win every single weekend. Those expectations are going to be changed a little bit. I'm still going to be my same self as a driver and trying to maximize every single thing I can and trying to be the best driver out there. But I need to recognize, that this is IndyCar, this is the big stage, and everything is very, very competitive.
And we spoke a lot last time about kind of the value of being that leader driving for Abel Motorsports. Is there anything that you can kind of take from being in that figurehead role for so long that you can transfer skill-wise into your IndyCar career that maybe other drivers won't have?
Yeah, definitely. I think just the sheer setup knowledge and willingness to try new things, I think would be the biggest thing. I have had to do all of kind of the grunt work in the past and developing new things, trying new setups, new philosophies that the team has. And I think that's given me a little bit more of an open mind, a little bit of more of a tolerance to accept imperfection a little bit. And yeah, I think that'll be super beneficial going into this year because, there are going to be things that we're going to want to change. There are going to be things that we're going to develop. We're going to try and take it to the big teams and do as much as we can to get there. And I think that's going to require a ton of patience. And that's something I think I've developed throughout the past few years at Abel Motorsports.
And I mean, we're kind of duty bound to just ask about kind of the contractual stuff as much as drivers don't like speaking about it. Do you have any security beyond 2025 at this point, or is it kind of a case of this deal is for 2025, see how things go, and then might progress beyond there?
Yeah, right now it's a 1-year deal. There is interest to expand beyond that, but the way we kind of looked at it is, if it's going to be mutually agreed, let's let it just be mutually agreed when that time comes. And yeah, we'll see when we get there.
Does that add any extra pressure, or is it just the pressure's always on and when there's so much competition? And
yeah, I mean, I think the pressure is always on, and I think last year I had a very similar level of pressure. It was I knew it was my last year in Indy Next. It was my 3rd year in the series. It was kind of a make or break time. Really needed to go out and win races and prove myself. And I ended up doing that. And I actually really enjoyed the pressure of that. We had no plans after 2024, and that's somewhere I've never really been in my career. So to get that again, I'm kind of okay with, because it puts the pressure on me, and it allows me to focus on really maximizing every single lap I have on track and fully preparing for it. And, basically spending every lap like it's my last, because, you never know this year. The sport is so not reassuring that you do have to succeed. And I recognize that, and I look forward to that.
It's always a very hard question, but what would you sort of see as a successful season for yourself? Is there any goals or anything, at least in the early part?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit tough to establish goals. I think for me, it's going to be just to seize every single opportunity possible and maximize every result, whatever it is. If we have a P15 car, finish 15th or better. Don't put it in the wall trying to get a top 10 or something like that. I really need to maximize my results and put everything together, and know that, there will be probably a couple weekends where we're out of it a little bit, but hopefully there'll be a few that, we do have a good car and we are able to succeed and have our opportunities. So it's going to be really maximizing both of those when they do come, so that, I'll be able to maximize my successes as much as possible.
115 days from the day of recording is the Indianapolis 500. You had any thoughts towards that so far?
Honestly, not really. I think the team always has that circled, and the team manager, Mitch Davis, has tons of experience there, and that's something he's always looking forward to. And yeah, I think the team is obviously preparing for it. They have their Indy 500 cars set aside at the shop that are kind of getting their special treatment a little bit, just like every team does. But yeah, I think that month is going to be very special, and I really can't wait for it. I don't think it's going to feel real that I'm racing there or trying to qualify for that race and going to be driving that whole month until it actually comes. And it's something that I really can't wait for.
Are there any other aspects of the year that you would say you're most looking forward to?
I'm just excited, for St. Pete in particular, just to get the season underway, get that first race under my belt, trying to learn everything, and then just building off of that. The schedule is pretty intense, especially in that middle part where it's just back to back to back. And I think that's kind of why we love it. That's the best part of the year, and I'm looking forward to that. And it's going to be super fun just to get a ton of experience in a very short amount of time.
So between St. Pete and now, we've got the Sebring kind of full field test coming up, but is there anything else planned that you've got with the team that you kind of feel like you're needing to go through ahead of the season?
No, I think we're going to try and do as much simulator time as possible. I think the targets will probably be the tracks that I have the least amount of experience on, kind of like Long Beach, Thermal, Toronto, Indy. The other tracks, I feel pretty comfortable, and I feel like I know what I need from a race car at those places. So yeah, excited for those. We have a few more tests. Being a rookie, I do get a couple more days, so that's exciting. And yeah, just trying to learn as much as we can in a short amount of time as possible.
Do you have any other test days other than Sebring between now and St. Pete, or will that come kind of sporadically through the season?
Yeah, we don't before St. Pete. But I will say the tests that we do have planned are a little bit more front loaded. I think part of that is obviously because I'm a rookie, and we want to get as much learning done as possible early on. But also once we get into the meat of the season, basically May onward, it's pretty much nonstop. There's no time for testing. So yeah, we will have some more tests sprinkled in between those first like 4 or 5 rounds. Which will be exciting, and yeah, I think they're going to be super important for our learning and improvement.
Being an IndyCar rookie, I think it's only fair the listeners learn a bit more about you off the track. So we got a series of random questions to get to know you a little bit better for our viewers, maybe. So I guess the most generic one is a fun fact about yourself that people may not know.
Oh man, I got asked this so many times at media day. What are your guys' fun facts? I'm sure you get one. You get this question a lot.
I've got a YouTube video with over 1 million views.
Wow, I don't.
Fun fact about myself. I don't know. I run an Instagram.
Right? It's hard.
I know it's so hard. I run an Instagram account dedicated to Manchester United that has over 40,000 followers.
That's awesome. That is cool. I think I just accidentally gave you a virtual thumbs up, but that's sweet. Yeah, I'd say, I don't know. My fun fact is probably my fun fact outside of racing is always that I'm a race car driver. So I'd say I actually did go to college for a little bit. That's kind of rare from racing. I think I'm a relatively, normal Midwestern kid. I went to a high school for full time. I didn't do any of that online school or anything through, through karting and through the junior formulas. I did go to school full time, and I went to university. I didn't graduate. I did attend for.
What were you studying in university?
Marketing.
Oh, okay.
Marketing. So I am a Butler Bulldog, which is a university here in Indianapolis. So I'm a big fan of their sports, particularly when they're good, which is unfortunately a little bit rare right now. But yeah, also just a huge sports fan.
I guess actually studying marketing is probably quite helpful for being a racing driver as well in certain aspects.
For sure. I think it does maybe give me a little bit more respect for the business side of everything. Even when you are studying marketing, you still take finance courses, economics courses, all of that, just basic business classes. So I do think it gives me maybe a little bit more respect of what goes on behind the scenes, and a bit more of an understanding for the teams actually needing to make money, and the sponsorship and companies needing to provide value for their company when cutting those checks and everything. So it is helpful, I think, and yeah, I certainly enjoyed it.
And next question, you mentioned a bit about sport. What other sports do you kind of follow or maybe play in your spare time?
Yeah, so I grew up playing lacrosse. I played that my whole entire young life, from, I don't know, when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade all the way up to sophomore year of high school. I think I ended up having to quit to go race car driving. But yeah, that's kind of the only sport I actually probably know how to play. I don't really watch a lot of it, as it's obviously not that big, but I am a big fan of football, like most Americans. I have my fantasy football team, and I do my sports betting from time to time. So yeah, I'm interested in that. I've just kind of gotten into cycling, so I've started to watch a little bit of that, which is fun. I think it's a pretty common one for race car drivers, but yeah, I'd say those are probably the main ones.
Do you have any particular teams that you follow
in cycling?
In any sport?
In football, I'm a Colts fan. Being in Indianapolis, I've kind of chose them when I started to get into the NFL a little bit a few years ago, and it's been a journey, as any sports team that's not winning championships every year, as any fan of those sports teams can relate to. But it's been cool to go to some of those games and have a team to really cheer for. And then college sports is probably what I really grew up on. I'm from Louisville, so I've been a big Louisville Cardinal fan my whole entire life. in football, basketball, all of that. They actually are good this year in basketball, so that's been pretty fun to watch. But yeah, big college sports fan as well.
I would describe myself as a casual American football watcher. I'm actually wearing a Tampa hoodie at the moment.
There you go.
Super Bowl pick.
It's going to be really hard for the Chiefs to not win. I don't think the Eagles are the second best team in the NFL right now, so I don't know if they're necessarily the team to bring it to them. But yeah, we'll see. It's the Super Bowl. It's kind of like the Indy 500 or any big sporting event. Kind of brings out the best of everyone, and anything can happen.
Yeah, I was just going to say the one time I've actually been to the States was going back, I think 9 years now, and this was before I was really a motorsport fan even. But we went to St. Pete as a family, flew into Tampa, so that's kind of from there became a Buccaneers fan. But also kind of since the IndyCar stuff's kind of started to come across my radar, I've also followed the Colts a bit because
there you go.
I feel like there's so much chat about the Colts.
Right, there is.
Any NBA team?
No, I've never really been an NBA guy. To be honest, I haven't really been an NFL guy that much either. But because we didn't have any professional teams being from Louisville, so it was always college sports. It was always Louisville versus Kentucky, big rivalry there. And didn't really get into the NFL until the past couple of years. But yeah, it's so I'm more of a college sports guy. Definitely college basketball.
So being from the UK, we must ask, you ever been over here?
I've not been to the UK.
You've not been?
The only time I've been to Europe at all is, it's actually kind of funny being a race car driver because a lot of people are from there or have raced over there and all of that. But my sister in college studied abroad in Barcelona, and we went and visited her for a week. But that was the only time I've been there.
We'll go to simpler waters. Do you sort of have a favourite track, a track you love to drive an IndyCar at somewhere?
Yeah, it's always kind of been Mid-Ohio is the default one that I've always liked ever since starting racing. It was the first track I ever drove at. I did my racing school there. I actually worked at that racing school there a couple of years later. So I've spent a ton of time there. But honestly, I haven't had the most success at that track, unfortunately, throughout the past few years. So you always tend to gravitate towards the tracks that you're good at. And recently, that's been Barber. I love Barber. I love driving around that place.
And I mean, we've just come to the end of we're coming to the end of a busy off season. Well, a busy off season for you. But if you do have downtime, is there anything that you kind of enjoy to do in your spare time?
Yeah, I love hanging out with my friends, to be honest. We don't get to do that all that much. And throughout my whole career in racing, you're always gone. You're always missing out on things, even since high school, football games and just weekend social events and all of that. So whenever I'm home, I just try and be home and enjoy spending time with my friends, a lot of which that I met at Butler, hanging out with them, sort of hobbies. I'm a bit of a hobby guy. I'll pick something up and be obsessed with it for 6-7 months and then seem to drop it again. Right now, I'm really into cycling. I've been loving doing that, and it's also a great way to help train. Previously, it's been rock climbing. I really enjoyed that the past few years, and I do also enjoy playing golf, like a lot of Americans do too. So, I love it. But yeah, I think those are kind of it when we do get a little bit of free time.
You've been to Indy Golf Course, yeah?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Brickyard Crossings is amazing. As a driver, you get a little bit of a discount, so I've been able to take my friends out there, and it's almost become my home course, which is pretty crazy based on how nice that place is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a golf guy, but I think I would try and pick up golf just to get to play there.
Right, it's cool. Right when you finish, I guess it would be, I think it's going on to the 7th hole. You go through the tunnel and the cart immediately plays this big Indy 500 hype video, from the race and showing cars on track and the snake pit and all of that. It's pretty cool. It's I can say, even though I've played there, probably 20 times now, I've never skipped that video. It's always cool, always exciting. And it's always fun to see people's first reaction kind of going into the racetrack to play that hole.
Amazing. Do you have a favorite holiday destination or maybe a dream holiday destination?
I don't know. I think I'm a I'm not much of a beach guy. I'm also not much of a mountains guy. I do really like lakes and surfing behind boats and wakeboarding. I've kind of grown up doing that. So I think just the dream vacation destination would be with a cool boat on a lake house somewhere for like a week. Just being able to be doing something and be active out on the boat with some friends and yeah, just have a good time.
Probably the most important question of the day. If every IndyCar driver had an arm wrestling competition, who wins?
I definitely don't think I would. I'm abysmal at arm wrestling. I think you have to say Joseph Newgarden, right? I mean, that guy is like the Hulk. So he's just perfect in every aspect. So yeah, I would say him.
What did you make of the commercial, by the way, with Newgarden and the Pillow one as well?
That was awesome. I think it's so cool to see the drivers really made to be heroes. I think it's kind of highlights what we do and kind of throws it back a little bit into the old days of drivers being, kind of badass guys who drive at, over 200 miles an hour and risk their lives doing it. And I think to show their personalities is something that's really important. And I hope, Fox continues to do that and to make celebrities out of the drivers. I think is a great way to promote the sport.
One thing we love asking several of the drivers is, do you have any travel disasters, any absolute stinkers somewhere where you end up at the wrong place or anything?
I've had some pretty terrible ones, like anyone has. I think one in particular, there's missed flights all over the place. I don't really miss flights on purpose that much, obviously. I think I'm relatively good at getting to the airport on time and all of that, but I was thinking about this earlier. One time I was in New Orleans and it sucked. I was coaching all weekend long. So it wasn't even like I was driving, and it was, I think a Spirit Airlines flight or something. So I was kind of rushing to the airport or trying to get a ride out of the airport. And then the flight got delayed by like an hour. I'm like, oh, okay, we're good. This is perfect. I get to the airport and they're like, oh yeah, well, we actually decided to send the flight off at the regular scheduled time. And I'm like, so you didn't figure it would be important to notify anyone about that? And they're like, no, we don't have to do that. I'm like, okay, awesome. And so I bounced around, that airport trying to find different airlines out because I didn't want to spend another night there and all of that. And I think even one of the other airlines that I booked the flight and it was scheduled to leave in like an hour or something, 50 minutes. And I go up to the gate to get my seat assignment, 45 minutes. It was actually 44, 43 minutes before the flight. And they're like, oh, check-in's closed. You can't get on this flight. I'm like, are you kidding me? And then started boarding. And this is all in the same time. Same day as the Spirit flight had happened too. So that was one of the ones. It was just after a long day of coaching at the track in the hot sun and yeah, I just couldn't get home. So that's probably my one travel disaster. That's a nightmare, but I'm sure everybody has their own versions of stories. So
yeah, that will take some beating, I think.
It was just thing after thing. And I'm looking at every single airline and I think I finally figured out a way to get out, but man, it was something for sure.
Oh my word. And just to close, we do this with all of the IndyCar drivers we have on the podcast. So you now have the privilege of choosing 2 songs to add to our IndyCar driver Spotify playlist. So which 2
songs? See, this is another one of those questions that you always get something song related, and I never have a good answer for. I never have a good answer for it. What are some of the ones other guys have done?
Right, I've got
all over the board.
This would be a fun game, guessing which driver put what song there. It's a different topic. We got Africa by Toto, Apple by Charlie XCX,
nice.
I should say. Californication, Life is a Highway. We got some country music in there by Sam Barber, some Avicii, loads, everything.
Some Avicii, that's good. Gosh, we got to do we could add, it's called, let's do this. This will be good. My Old Kentucky Home, which is Basically the Kentucky Derby's version of Back Home Again in Indiana.
Okay.
And with that, we'll also add Back Home Again in Indiana.
Nice.
So it's like,
yes.
it's a very similar vibe. I'm sure you guys know the whole Back Home Again in Indiana thing that they do before the race. And so it was a super special moment. At the Kentucky Derby, they do a very similar thing with my old Kentucky home. So we'll add both of those. I think that'll be a good one.
I'm sure if anybody ever runs into this playlist, they have the weirdest combination of songs I think ever come across. I think it's the biggest jumbled playlist you've ever seen, but that's what you get from all the drivers.
Perfect. I love it.
But that is it for today, Jake. We really appreciate your time, and obviously another congratulations from us, I'm sure all the viewers, on getting that full-time seat for 2025. We wish you the very, very best on track, and just over about exactly a month away now, pretty much, until we see you on the streets of St. Petersburg for the first time. So let's have a great season ahead, and yeah, we're all looking forward.
Great. Thank you guys very much. It's always a pleasure to join you all.